Okay, hello everybody. Really excited to be here today. So for those of you who I haven't met yet, I think I've met most people. I'm Jane Mather, a senior advisor at PacifiCan, and I'm joined with Lucas Coletta and Michelle Radley, and we're here, we're the Lytton recovery team. So we're here today to talk to you about the homeowners program. I think as most people have heard, PacifiCan announced two programs. So there's a business restart program and our resilient homeowner rebuilding program. And today we're really excited to talk about the homeowner program. I know we've been to a few community meetings, a couple council meetings. We've had the opportunity to give you the high level overview, but today we're able to get into the details. So we're super excited to do that. So here's our plan for the day. So we're going to give you, just go into a little bit about what the homeowner program is about. We're going to talk about the eligibility, and we're going to talk a little bit about how we've structured the grant program and how the funding will flow in your pathway through it. And then we have Lucas here who's going to talk to you what we mean by fire resilience, what we mean by net zero, and what that looks like. So that's what our plan is for today, and then there'll be lots of time for questions and answers. So if you have any questions and answers, we're happy to, hopefully we can address them today, and if not, we'll follow up with you. So this program involved partners. So PacifiCan didn't do it on our own. We were really excited to partner with Natural Resources Canada, so that's why we have Lucas with us today. He's been very much a part of our team and helped us with the modeling and looking at what are the costs involved, what does it take to build a fire resilient net zero home. This was certainly not in the wheelhouse of PacifiCan, so we definitely leaned in on our partners for this bet. And then we also work closely with the Canada Home Builders Association, and Lucas will speak a little bit about that in terms of the net zero standard. When we're talking about net zero, I think even for some of us coming into the program, we're like, what do you mean by net zero, and how do you achieve net zero? So these were the questions we had and that we answered through the program and through working closely with partners. So we really wanted to highlight that before we launch into the details, just to say, how did we get here, who did we work with, and who are our partners in the program. So you're seeing a lot of us here today, and there are others, and we have some builders who are going to help us answer some questions. So we're going to talk about that as well. So before we go into the details, we did want to speak to the journey, because I know it's been a while since the program was announced, and we've been working hard, so we wanted you to know that we recognized we needed to engage the right experts. So that's been part of our journey in building the program. And then it also took building a local builders together. Like, we understand and we're hearing that's a theme. It's a solutions that fit the Lytton context, and we wanted to make sure that our program was exactly that. So in early April, we had what's called a builder charrette, so where we brought together local builders and experts, and working with Lucas, running through the models that got us to the grant program that we have, and the numbers that we have today that we believe are reflective of the context here in Lytton. So I just really wanted to highlight the process that went in. It wasn't a program we just quickly scrambled, and there was a lot of work and a lot of bringing in local experts to help us, along with national experts and standards that comes with this. So in terms of what is the program about? So we've talked about it being, it's to support homeowners who are building back in Lytton and to help build back better. So it's building back to those higher standards of fire resilience and to net zero. We recognize that this is over and above what the current step code is and for what insurance covers, that this is that bit that gets you to that more resilient home. So that's the focus of this program. And why this? I think Lucas is going to speak to the attributes of that, but just knowing that to build back, especially in Lytton, it's important to have that fire resilience, and I know that Council has brought that into his building bylaws, so that will be a part of building here, and then net zero is looking at having more durable home, and Lucas is going to speak to those attributes. So who's eligible for this program? So this program is available for homeowners in the community of Lytton. So and we define the community as being within the village boundaries and within 15 kilometers of the village. So that's how we've defined the community of Lytton for the purposes of this program. So it's eligible for individuals who owned a property at the time of the fire that was destroyed in the 2021 wildfire, and for individuals who are building back a primary residence here in Lytton. So that's the eligibility criteria for the program. So in terms of what the program's going to offer, it's a grant program, so it's a top-up grant program. We've been talking about that, and there are two pathways. So there's the fire resilience. So for homeowners wanting to build back fire resilient homes, there's a grant available for that pathway. And for homeowners wanting to build fire resilient and net zero, there's a pathway for that as well. So homeowners have the choice. It's about, we wanted to make sure that the program helped whatever rebuild that homeowners wanted to do with these aspects. So, and I think I mentioned to the standards, so, and Lucas is going to speak to in terms of what we mean exactly by net zero and fire resilience, and that the program will have, we have identified program requirements working with fire resilient experts, so there'll be a checklist for builders to use, and then with net zero, as I mentioned, we're working closely with the CHBA labeling system. So those are the key aspects of the program. Okay, and Lucas is going to, I start a little bit, and I'm going to turn to Lucas to talk about the technical details.
Perfect, thanks Jane. So like Jane mentioned, there's two pathways to this program that we want to relatively focus on. One of them involves fire resiliency and the other one involves net zero. Building back better, fire resiliency, I think most of us understand the value of building our homes to be fire resilient. Some of the attributes that come with it are buying you valuable time to potentially evacuate or get to a safer place. And some of the materials and some of the measures that we look to promote are putting non-combustible materials such as asphalt or metal roofing on top of your roof. We also want to look at the design features, so looking at enclosed gutters and eaves. So mainly what we want to do when we're speaking about fire resiliency is try to limit the entrance of fire into the house. So what we're trying to do is prevent embers from reaching, coming up inside of your soffit where you may have a vent or an attic. If anything hot lands on your roof, we want to make sure that that's not catching fire, and so that's the importance of having combustible materials, non-combustible rather. This is just a sample of some of the measures that you'll see on the checklist when you decide to build to fire resiliency. Some of them include windows, so we're looking at putting a tempered pane on the outside of your windows, so when it does get really hot, if that window were to explode, for lack of a better term, you wouldn't lose the physical barrier of that window, so you would still have some protection from the outdoors. Other ones that we're looking at are vents. So I mentioned embers flying. We have embers coming through the air and they land on your house, and if there's any openings within the home, then that's an opportunity for that ember to get inside and cause the fire from the inside. So then you have a fire from the outside and the inside, and we want to avoid that as much as possible. We also want to build back to net zero, and for a number of reasons. It's ultimately improves the quality of life in terms of housing, when we talk about comfort, when we talk about health. Specifically in net zero homes, they're built to higher construction standards, and what we see coming of that is the ability to be anywhere in your house and feel comfortable. Has anyone been in a house where it's like an old window and you're in the middle of winter and you stand next to the window and you just feel the heat kind of getting sucked off of your body? When we're in net zero houses, we can stand anywhere in the home and feel comfortable. And that also leads to healthier living. So when we have more airtight homes, we're able to control the ventilation within it. And if we have smoky days outside, or if folks are more sensitive to air conditions, then net zero homes are exceptional at providing great indoor air quality. It also reduces cost. So one of the primary benefits of net zero is being able to produce as much energy as you use in your home. And we accomplish that by putting solar panels on the roof. So we get nice sunny days like this. We're not having to spend money on buying electricity from the utility or from the grid. We're generating it from the sun. The other one I have noted here is it's environmentally responsible. So we are reducing our impact on the grid and how much energy we're taking from alternative sources, specifically when we transition from a fossil fuel, so gas or from propane, to a net zero house, we're reducing a lot of carbon as well. So the energy efficiency ingredients, I call them ingredients because they're little components of the home that all contribute to how much energy it uses. So we have our attics, for instance. We put insulation in our attic to make sure heat doesn't rise up and escape in the wintertime. We build our homes to be very airtight, so that way when we spend money to heat the air inside of the house, it doesn't just leak to the outside. That'd be the same as kind of opening your window in the middle of winter. We know windows have a good impact on energy efficiency. Walls, our heating and cooling systems, our foundation, so how we build our basement and our slab. And when we put all these together, all these ingredients, we end up with the recipe. And depending on what combination of ingredients you have, you may end up at a step 3 house, or you may end up at a net zero house. And both of these, the difference between these are primarily energy efficiency and what combination of ingredients you've chosen. And when we talk about a net zero house, we have, as you can see on that image there, we have solar panels on the roof. So that becomes like an integral part of our net zero recipe. So energy efficiency in housing has been steadily improving in Canada over the last 20 or 30 years. We know that there's been a tremendous impact when you compare it to homes built before 1990. We see that those homes specifically had really poor energy efficiency. They typically costed a lot to heat and cool throughout the year. We also noticed that they didn't have very much insulation. You'd find windows that maybe only had a single pane of glass, or you only had this much insulation in your wall. And you can notice that when you're walking through the house and when you see your utility bill at the end of the month. And then uncomfortable rooms. So this inconsistency in temperature from room to room throughout the house. In a net zero house and in more energy efficient homes, you can go into any room of the home and it'll be the same temperature as the opposite end of the house. And we do that through technology and through just advanced building practices that we've been learning throughout the last 20 years. BC Step 3 homes. We learned on May 1st that all homes in British Columbia will be required to build to Step 3. That is a massive improvement in energy efficiency from your 1990s home. It uses more than 50% less energy than your 1990 home. It's high quality construction practices. There's a number of builders that are here this weekend, and they are all excellent at building to Step 3 homes. And most people who live in a Step 3 home notice a huge improvement over what their previous house was. And then we talk about net zero homes. They're also excellent in energy efficiency. But one of the main differences between that and a Step 3 home is your ability to produce the energy from the solar panels. So you're significantly reducing the costs to operate that house throughout the year. Again, it has the high quality construction practices, and then we see improvements in comfort, health, and resilience that are above and beyond what we see in Step 3. Just a quick comparison here between net zero and what the current building code is. So both net zero and Step 3 require the use of an energy advisor. The role of an energy advisor is to understand how much energy the building uses and be able to design it accordingly to meet a Step 3 or to a net zero target, and do it in a way that's cost effective as well. Both net zero and Step 3 take about the same time for design and construction. It's just a matter of understanding what you want to do at the beginning of the project and planning for it. Net zero homes are built with more durable and energy efficient materials. We've seen that net zero homes are being constructed across Canada in a number of climate zones. And we understand relatively well what goes into a net zero home and what materials we want to use to make it durable, to make it energy efficient, to make it safe, to make it healthy. So net zero homes are the way of the future. Our building code in Canada is progressing toward that direction. And we're excited for everyone who's been able to live in a net zero home. They have nothing but great things to say about it. And we're really looking forward to more of these houses popping up across Canada. And then the last note here, it uses about 80% less grid energy than Step 3. I say grid energy because we don't necessarily need to buy it from our utility provider anymore. It's coming right from the sun to our solar panels there. I want to just take a moment here. We have a couple of folks with us. We have Clayton and Jordan. Clayton is a net zero builder, and Jordan is a net zero energy advisor. And we just had a couple of questions. I thought it'd be worthwhile to get their perspective on some of the things that I shared with you here today. So, and one question I have for Jordan, how would you describe the benefits of living in a net zero home from a homeowner's perspective?
Depending on what aspect you're into, some of the big ones, the environmental impact of being in that home, having it more comfortable. I'm sure everyone's been in, the house with a cold window, or that room that was built over top of a carport where there's no insulation in the floor. Just being comfortable in that house any time of year, no matter what the weather's doing outside. No energy bills is always a nice feature. Not having to pay for utilities. And then the health aspect, whether it's pollen pollutants, bad air quality outside, none of that's going to affect you when you're living in your net zero home.
So, can I ask a question? Are you talking solar panels on the roof? Is that what is doing all the heating and energy in the home, or is it there's a combination of that and something else?
Well, the solar panels are just the way to collect the energy from the sun, so you're still going to have a heating system, usually an air source heat pump.
Okay.
So, or even electric baseboard heaters.
Yeah.
Where does it store? Where does it get stored to? How big of a battery pack does it store to?
You don't even need a battery. They can do what's called a grid tie, and it just ties right into your local utility. And then there's a process called net metering.
Right.
So if you end up making more than you
So
use,
you can sell it back to them?
sell it back to the grid. Or if you're not using enough, it's not like your lights are going to shut off. You've still got the power there.
Do
And
you
how
need,
much
do you need
does
all-day
the-
sun for that to operate? Or like I'm up against the mountain, so Jim, can we use like a three-quarters of a day of sun to energize the solar panels?
Yep, and then that'll depend on what's called a shade score.
Yeah.
So depending on how your house is built and where your sun is coming from, there are things you can do when you're building that house, like have windows on a certain side that have a high solar heat gain. So you're getting that free energy from the sun, not only from your solar panels, but through your windows to heat the inside of your house.
How much storage do you need to run everything you need in your house? Dishwasher, washer, dryer, all of those appliances?
Depends on the house. Usually,
Let's say a two-base house.
like a 5 kilowatt system. So 15-ish solar panels. But and then that depends on the occupancy as well. You know, I've had situations where this person owned a business where they did wedding linens for tablecloths and chair covers. So they're doing 30 loads of laundry. They use significantly more power.
What about short periods in winter of 30 below wind chill factor, maybe bring it down to 40? I've seen it rare and Lytton. I'm sure you've seen it in Kamloops, or if you're from this fellow's from
Yep.
Kamloops.
Yes.
What will accommodate that in a net zero home? A heat pump, or is a heat pump good till 10 below?
There are,
This is Hyundai at $33,000 will accommodate 30 below, isn't there? Hyundai, next one, 33 grand. For up north, okay?
possibly. You get cold climate air source heat pumps that are good to minus 30.
Okay.
You can also have provisions like electric baseboard heats as a backup. You can even, there's no rule saying that you can't have even a gas or wood burning in a net zero home for those extreme conditions.
But what's really nice, just to add to that about net zero homes, is that they're super insulated. And so when it's minus 30 out, you actually don't need very much heat to keep yourself warm.
That was my question. Can it accommodate net zero home, 30 degrees, heat pump,
Mm-hmm.
12 grand, okay, off the shelf, installed? Okay, that was my question.
Well, when you're doing your inspection as the, what's your funny name that you call this role?
Energy advisor?
Thank you. I just got their time. So anyway, like that caught my attention right away. I built my own home a while back, and luckily for me, I didn't have to have it. I was the energy advisor. But now that you're there, so my understanding is that I bring my plan to you and say, I want you to make it as net zero as we can make this thing, right? And then you go through the plan and tweak this, change that, make this recommendation, like you would sit down with this couple here that's wondering about their heat pump, and you would advise them based on what you know, and then they would then follow your advice to affect their design. So the whole thing starts with the design, does it not?
Yeah, essentially it does start at the beginning with the design, and then you kind of design for that lot and that specific build. You know, if you're, like where your front of your house is going to be versus the cardinal direction of like north, south, east, and west. And then we do like what's a computer-generated energy model of that home, so we can find out how it performs, and then we can add things, like Luke was saying, the recipe of like, okay, well, we can see that this home as designed is losing a lot of heat through the foundation, and then we can decide what we need to do to that to mitigate that.
Maybe Clayton, you can add to that. I think just on the discussion of like who does the homeowner engage with? Are they going to the energy advisor immediately? Or are they working with the builder? Do they kind of function as the project manager? Could you?
Yeah, so you want to find a licensed net zero builder that you want to work with, and then the builder would bring in his or her energy advisor, and they would work all in conjunction at the design stage, so when the plans are getting drawn, so that if there's any changes that need to be made, they're made at the beginning stage. Like Jordan said, it all depends on where your house faces, how your lot is, where you're going to put your windows. So it's very crucial. Then the builder basically deals with all of that. So it's not for the homeowner to do. You guys just work with the architect and get the plans drawn up.
Really?
And would you say it's the same for step 3 at net zero?
It's identical. You still have to bring in an energy advisor no matter what. So building net zero versus step 3 is no different. It's not going to take any longer. It's the same process. You're just getting a better house at the end of it. We've been building energy efficient homes in Kamloops for about 5 years now. Homes that we have been doing started with a 60,000 BTU furnace, then we started doing them in step 3. They went to a 40,000 BTU furnace, and now we're going to net zero, the 12,000 BTU furnace. So you can see how significant the heating system drops down when you make it so energy efficient.
Thank you. Question over there.
So just prior to this TNRD building development director, or worker, I'm not sure what Regina's full title is, said that energy advisors are few and far between and very difficult to find. And in the region of the TNRD, which goes from Blue River to here, over Merritt, sometimes they suggested just overbuilding so that you had no doubt you were making that, you add maybe another 4 inches or whatever of insulation to meet the standard. Because in rural areas in particular, as opposed to cities, it's very difficult and expensive to have people come and do that evaluation. So that's one comment I wanted to make. The other was I wanted to ask about heat pumps, because, and I did hear someone, I had my hand up for a while, and the heat pump thing. So solar panels are great, but not everybody lives in the sun, and in the winter it's limited. Heat pumps are sort of a misnomer in that it's a heat pump, but it's also a cool pump. And on days like this, and we get a lot of them, I mean, it's early May, cooling costs in Canada are equal, if not more, than heating costs. So my question to PacifiCan is heat pumps, cool pumps, whatever we want to call them, is that part of the incentive package that rebuilders will be able to access?
So I wouldn't say the incentive package specifies any particular technology. The only requirement is that in the net zero case, that you reach a net zero certification. You could do that with electric baseboards, with a furnace if you want, or heat pumps. However, heat pumps are typically the one we find most often in net zero homes, and they operate really efficiently. So if you think about an electric baseboard, we put 1 unit of energy into that baseboard and we get 1 unit of heat out. When we're talking about a heat pump, we put 1 unit of energy in and we get 2 to 3 units of heating or cooling out the other end. So just by putting technologies like that, we're already saving a lot of energy. But to answer your question, we don't prescribe that you need to use a heat pump. We just need to get to net zero with however means you choose to.
And if I could just sneak another quick question in. At one time during discussions with PacifiCan, I thought there was a comment made that perhaps the energy advisors would be provided for, the cost would be covered by your agency. Is that still part of it?
It is. I think we're going to, as we move along our presentation, we'll learn a little bit more about that.
Okay.
Can I?
Go for it, Jordan.
So I just want to comment on that thing about the energy advisors being a scarce resource. If anything, I think there's too many energy advisors right now. It's become a little bit saturated. I do service all of BC. We've got a team of people. I'm in Blue River, probably going to be doing a blower door test in Willowatt tomorrow.
And energy advisors don't need to come throughout the whole project. Like you work with them at the design stage, they model the house, then they'll come out at the mid-construction when you guys do when the builder does the installation, do a preliminary blower door test, so you can go around and fix the holes in the poly, get it airtight before you put the drywall on, and then they come back at the very final, do the final blower door, and check all the equipment, make sure all the equipment is as per the spec, and that's basically it.
We're going to go over there. They had their hand up for some time.
Thanks. A question about solar panels and about backup with heat. I've heard that it can actually be too hot for solar panels from a person that they can actually melt. Is there any truth to that?
I haven't heard anything like that. Jordan or Clayton?
No.
No.
So
I
when you
put
get to
a-
49 degrees?
No,
you're
certainly not. I mean,
okay.
they use solar panels in the middle of the desert, right, where it gets very, very hot.
Awesome.
So, well,
This is the hottest place in the world,
There you
the day of the fire. So, okay.
Talk about
The
it.
second
That's right,
question
yeah.
was, would burning as a backup heat, would that negate net zero?
No.
being an option. So you can still have a net zero home
Yeah,
With what he.
yeah, net zero is like fuel agnostic.
as long as you close that vent. So
Well, and I mean, that doesn't really matter either, because you do such a great job detailing your building envelope, even when you have things like flues from wood burning stoves.
Great.
Like you test it with that, you know, if it's super windy outside, that damper is gonna shut the way it's supposed to.
Like that, I close the vent. Perfect, thanks.
So how does net zero compare to step 5? Are they the same thing?
You can hit net zero on a step 3 house. It's just as long as you can produce as much energy as you can use, it can be step 3, 4, or 5.
Okay, so
And
there's
still-
no, it doesn't fall in the BC step
Net-
in that way.
It's a little bit on the outside of it, because the goal that we're all building towards is 2032 step 5, which is
Yeah.
they're calling net zero ready.
Okay.
But
A second question.
You can have a net zero home that falls within that spectrum. It's
Yeah.
it's unlikely you're going to have like a lower performing house that's going to reach net zero
Yeah.
because of all the attention to detail you need to do with making that building envelope 30% better.
So my second question is about windows, and I heard you talk about everything sealed up, so can I have windows that open?
For sure.
Yeah, you can.
Yes.
So one of the fire resiliency part of the checklist is to have a metal screen on the window. So if you weren't home in the event of a fire, you'd still have that physical barrier for preventing the embers from getting in.
So does the metal screen just come down? Like if you leave the home, you put the metal screen down and then keep it up when you're at home?
It's almost like a substitute for like a bug net. If you can imagine a window that you slide and there's like a little plastic kind of or like a rubber mesh on it, we just replace the rubber with metal so that way it doesn't melt in the heat.
Okay.
So it's kind of almost always there.
Okay.
I was just thinking about the longevity of the, just net zero in general, like how many years of these homes do you expect them to be built for?
Well, like Jordan said, 2032, it's going to be mandatory building code to be net zero.
I said, if I built my home today to this standard, and how long in the future is, barring anything like a fire, but can I expect that home to be still standing here 100 years from now?
For sure.
Doing the same job it's doing?
Yeah.
Yes.
And what's really nice about net zero homes is we put a lot more money into like the insulation and the actual structure of the home rather than the components of it. Like the mechanical equipment has a lifespan on it, right? After 15, 20 years, you need to replace it. When we're talking about net zero, we put a lot more of our dollar value into the envelope, which is going to be there for the full 100 years. That insulation is never going to need to get replaced. That building will always be airtight. And so it's an added benefit of, in terms of durability and life expectancy for these
And
types
what
of
about
houses.
solar panels? What is the longevity of those?
Do you guys have an answer for that
Well,
one?
I think they warranty like for 25 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now that you don't have the battery pack system, like it's hooked up to the grid, that was the biggest thing for years ago was maintaining batteries. But now that there's no batteries, then more panels warranty for 25 years.
So
And
we
that's-
live in a place where power goes out. We would want those batteries, I would
Yeah.
think.
You
So-
could have an option to go
Yeah, there are
battery
options
backup, yes.
for battery backup.
So everything's back in the grid now, straight off the roof and into the grid?
Yeah, it just goes
And
to
you get a
grid.
refund if you over grid.
Yeah, so
which
like
is more than you
like
use.
Jordan said, there's this smart meter that tracks power going in and power going out. So when you're at home cooking, doing laundry, you're not going to be making any power because you're using power. But when you're at work or you're at the grocery store, you're just feeding into the grid and it's calculating all that. So it's offsets as you're using it and when you're not using it.
Is there any stipulation, let's give you an example of 1,000 square foot house built on a slab modular or whatever, how much glass can be in the windows? Is there any regulation on that there? So that's 1,000 square feet, but the walls, the exterior, how much glass can you have on without getting into the red
Until you
area?
enter it until Jordan models it, and it depends on where the windows are facing. If you're gonna have a lot of north-facing windows, you're not gonna get any of
There was a
that.
lady in here earlier, I don't know her name, she was in charge of building permits right up the Blue River. She was in here in the session before and she showed us a house that was non-compatible. It was a design, all windows, glass, and she said, it's gonna be a no-no. So there you are.
Well, and that's why you engage at the
At the design stage, right?
Yeah.
And then that might be a building permit,
Yeah.
or sorry, building code issue with the amount of glazing you're allowed.
the consequence to putting a lot of windows though means less energy efficiency,
That's what
right? So it costs more money to get to net
Just
zero.
showed in the past seminar there.
Yeah.
actually.
Okay, I think we'll keep moving in our presentation. I'll turn it over to
okay.
Michelle.
Sure.
So now that we've heard a little bit more about what net zero and fire resilient construction looks like, what it involves, we really want to go into what does it mean to get you there through this program. So I just want to recap what Jane mentioned at the very beginning about the choices that this program offers. There's sort of 3 basic choices for rebuilding that homeowners will be able to choose. You can rebuild a fire resilient home, or you can rebuild a home that's fire resilient and net zero, or net zero ready. So you'll notice that across the board all the homes will at least be fire resilient. And so we've split up the program into 2 streams, and we've done this to sort of make sure that homeowners have choice in this. They can choose the one that they like, and they're receiving the support they need throughout those different choices. So pathway 1, these are for folks that just want to rebuild a fire resilient home, don't want to consider the net zero aspect of it. So this is a 1-step stream where homeowners will be able to go directly into like a building phase. And they'll receive, the program is put together a checklist of fire resilience measures. Once the homeowner can demonstrate that they've achieved all those things on the checklist, then they would receive the payment from PacifiCan. And so that's a grant of $10,000 just for fire resilient home. The second stream, or sorry, I should say the second pathway, is for people that are interested in exploring what net zero ready might look like for them. And so this pathway is a 2-step pathway. And so it starts with the design step. So as we just heard, design is such a critical aspect of net zero ready homes. And so we wanted to make sure the program was supporting homeowners at that step. Not only to get them to a net zero result at the end, but also as an opportunity to learn what net zero ready actually looks like. So it's an opportunity to see what your home might look like if you do choose that option. After that design step, homeowners have a choice of what they'd like to go towards their end result. So if they go through the design, they decide like net zero is not for me, I don't want to do it, you can go take that first arrow, go back up to just doing fire resilience, and you'll receive the grant payment of $10,000 towards a fire resilient home once you show that you've completed the requirements, the checklist. If you complete the design and you do decide that you're interested in either net zero ready, you would move into these 2 bottom arrows. So again, you would receive your grant payment after you've demonstrated that you've achieved certain results. And the payment for these 2 options, starting with net zero ready, we have a combination of a per square foot payment. So it'll be based on the size of your original home, and that's $24 per square foot, plus a $12,500 lump sum, which is really reflecting some of the fixed costs that go into net zero building that don't vary as much with the size of your home. If you decide to go to the full net zero, it's the same kind of idea as net zero ready. You'll receive, once you complete and show that you've achieved the standard, it's a payment of $24 per square foot, the same as net zero ready. But it's a larger lump sum of $45,000, and that sort of reflects the solar panels that are involved in net zero. So yeah, really just highlighting that the square footage costs, they're related to your original home. And so we wanted to put together a few funding examples to show you like what some of those total amounts you might expect to see at the end of this program based on a few different scenarios. So example 1, this is an 1,100 square foot home that you had previously, and you decide to go to build fire resilient and net zero. And so this is that 2-step pathway where you would complete the design first. And once you complete that design, you receive your payment of $5,000. Then you would also have to fulfill the checklist to show that you've completed the fire resilience requirements, and then you would receive the $10,000 for fire resilience. And then when you factor in the square foot cost for 1,100 square foot home plus the fixed cost, it's a $71,400 payment for the net zero, coming in for the total of $86,400. Example 2, again, it's 1,100 square foot home, but this time we're building to net zero ready. So similarly, you would receive payments for design, fire resilience, and then that square foot plus fixed cost for net zero ready, bringing you to $53,900. And then finally, you just want to do fire resilience. That one is not based on the size of your home. It's just a payment towards getting towards fire resilient. And so you would receive the $10,000 grant once you've completed. And so these following slides are really to show what that means for you, what it looks like, your journey through these different pathways through the program. And so for this one, if you decide just to do that one-step fire resilient pathway, you can start with sort of reviewing your eligibility and preparing the things that you need for application. It is like an eligibility-based acceptance into the program. So these are things like Jane mentioned up front. You owned a home in or within 15 kilometers of the village. Your home was destroyed in the Lytton fire on June 30th, and you plan to rebuild your primary residence. And so once you complete, you will require a few documents to show that you're eligible, and then at that point you would choose which pathway you're interested in doing and submit your application. And then number 3 is really about like the extra sort of documents that you'll have to provide throughout the program process. And these are things like, and we'll provide information on the full details of these, but for example, showing that you have a building permit and you're in accordance with the Heritage Act, and showing that you own your home, those kinds of things. You would then move to the building phase. You work with your builder. We'll provide the checklist and the guidance to your builder of exactly what they need to do to achieve the fire resilient outcome. And then again, once you show, your builder will attest that you've met it, you've completed it. This is when you would receive the grant at the end.
For topic or?
But wouldn't that grant, you're saying that grant money, doesn't that go into, when they're actually building, that money goes into the material as they're getting it, they put it in? Instead of at the end giving you a lump sum of here's your money?
Reimbursing you rather
Yeah.
than paying up front, I think is what he's asking.
Yeah, it's at the end.
So you're reimbursed, so residents are expected to come up with the.
It's not like a reimbursement in the sense that like they would have to provide.
But are you paying on your own while you're building and then you get
Yes,
that lump
yeah,
sum later?
exactly.
That's kind of.
That's hard for.
Yeah, see, that was my biggest question when I came and asked Jane. I said, the house I picked out has to be narrowed down to get to the square footage. So we're taking out this and that. And I don't want to get a lump sum at the end for whatever $86,000 or whatever, 71, and then say, why didn't I use that money to keep the house at the same size? If you know what I mean.
Yeah, it should be going.
I thought it helps as you're building that money, that the grant is for the material that's going to take you to net zero.
Yeah, unfortunately, when the money was announced a year ago, right, by the federal minister, that there was $6 million for homeowners to help them rebuild. And I think that's where that message, people felt that money would come to help them rebuild. This does, but not in the way that people thought.
Is there some way that you could cut 2 checks if they're going fire resilient and net zero, so that when they do their design and they order their house and the house obviously has those fire resistant materials, could they get a check like $10,000 up front as soon as that's verified? And then keep the account open so that if they hit net zero, they can get the rest of it later. It's just cash flow is an issue. People have been out of their homes for 2 years. Some people have been paying mortgages and insurance all the way along. So that might accommodate some need, some flexibility.
Yeah.
I'll jump in maybe just as well. I mean, sorry, I'm following up with these guys. You know, I think we talked through this quite a bit, and I think we understand. You know, I think we've heard that on a few. Oh, sorry, Burry. Oh, there you go. We've heard that on a few occasions, and we've heard that from a few people, and I think we're grappling with the consideration that we're putting together a package for an outcome, and if we find ourselves in a situation where that outcome isn't met, as government, we don't also want to be in a situation where we're applying back.
Could you speak up? I'm sorry,
to provide to individuals. What's that?
Could you speak up?
Oh, sorry.
Hear you.
We're working towards an outcome, right? And so in order to be able to set ourselves up to be able to provide this type of grant and not be working through a program that is receipt-based and, you know, kind of working off more of a reimbursement model, this is the frame that we need to be able to work in, because we are driving towards an outcome. So once that outcome is met, that gives us the ability to provide the funding, and that's the nature of how the government funding works in this sense.
Unfortunately, it will preclude people from building back that way.
I was gonna say, what if someone said, okay, I'm gonna build my house and I'm gonna have fire resistant material and I'm gonna do net zero, so that's what they're working towards. That's what they tell you they're working towards. But at some point they go, I can't do the net zero. I'm just doing fire resistant. No. You would then cut them a check for $10,000.
At the end of the construction for fire resilience.
Yeah,
It
but-
comes at the end once the outcome has been achieved.
I'm just seeing a lot of people, I don't know if it's your case or not, but I see a lot of people order them from, say, Linwood or Leon or whatever. Those are packages that they have to pay a percentage of, and the package says, this is the material we're using. So, I don't know, I thought maybe it wouldn't be that difficult to be somehow available to the fire resistance.
Well, on the fire
Especially
resistance, we can provide some more information on that, but the idea around the fire resilient measures is that it's a checklist of kind of approaches. And so it's up to the homeowner between them and their builder how they're going to achieve that. So whether it's an asphalt roof or metal roof or whatever, that's the individual homeowner's choice and preference and decision to be made. So we're not specifying specific materials or products in order to be able to achieve the outcomes that we're suggesting.
So essentially, you need that $10,000 upfront in order to get that. So.
Yeah, that's the main
that's the
question.
problem, yeah.
Why don't we get that money to build, not to put in our pocket at the end? You're talking giving you a check for $10,000 when you're all built?
Yeah.
Or go net zero? If you get everything built and say, why didn't I get that check before, so it'll help me build? That's what I'm asking.
Right now, we'll have to go into our investments to pay this $90,000 off. The church is
If
not
you're
gonna
lucky enough
cover
to
it.
have investments.
Yeah, that's right, because most of us are seniors.
Could there be a way where when you have your designer or your contractor in place that, and you have made the decisions as to what route you're going to go, that there could be some type of an agreement between PacifiCan and the contractor so that when they got to the stage, okay, where the contractor needed money, okay, to be paid, and they met the certain requirements that PacifiCan are requiring, that portion could go straight over to the contractor, so it doesn't even really need to work through the contractor and the owner or whoever, however the agreement is. But I can see that it's going to be a real problem for people to have to borrow money to, and the process is going to be like a year or 2 years to get all of this done, and then get your money at the end, but you paid all this interest along the way, and some people may have issues around the borrowing as well. So I can see that the money somehow should be going straight to whoever is providing that service, that to make the house where it needs to be.
So could there not be a clause in that, say, I mean, it's government funding, correct? It's grant government funding, so they can make a decision, you give them the funding up front, and you say, okay, I want to go net zero, and I'm going along, all the money's there, but if I don't reach it, I actually have to give the money back.
Well, that's what she's saying.
And I think we don't want to be in that position, right?
Yeah, but you're not going to be in any position if you don't give the money up front.
This money is only available for people that lost their homes in 2021 in Lytton, or is this available for anybody in BC that lost a home by fire?
That's correct. This is a program for Lytton.
So if Tom, Dick, or Harry, or Jeannie, or Mauve sold their lot here in Lytton, they are not going to get this net zero grant if they build, if an opportunist or a developer is going to build on that house, they are not
No, that's correct.
taking this
Just for
grant.
the
Okay.
primary.
Yes, it's for the
Thanks.
people. Yes.
And it's only for people with insurance.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Is it for people with only?
Yeah, only with insurance.
So if you've no insurance, you get nothing?
That's right.
So this is a question that's come up for us, and we appreciate this is a specific issue we've heard raised many, many times. We've taken that, we are working it through our systems right now, and we really do want to come back with a very solid response to that. But at this time, I can't. That is the eligibility criteria for the program. But we are sort of working through that issue right now, and we really want to be able to come back with a solid answer on that very, very soon.
So could you go back to the board and basically, you don't have a program if you don't have people, or if you didn't have insurance, you're not eligible. So there's more barriers here than even incentives. I mean, the money means nothing if you can't even get off the ground. So if it is government funding, they do have room to make those changes and to negotiate that, because you don't have a program. You didn't even start to build, so it makes 0 sense. You don't have any net zero anything.
Yeah, this would be really hard.
Is there a timeline on how long this program is going to be available? Or like if it's $6 million, okay, do you just hold it until it's all spent, or what?
So
I can
you can go that.
I mean, every government program has time limits on it, generally speaking, and so when this funding was originally announced, it was 2 years. We've been through one of those years already, and so right now we're looking at trying to support this program. So for anyone who's building their home starting this year or next year, that's the goal, is to make sure that those are.
But if I'm looking at the numbers that you have, even for the ones that are going for the full net zero, is that for the number of people that are going to be rebuilding, it's not even going to be touching $6 million. Like it's way under $6 million. So what else can happen so that Lytton gets to use that $6 million? Like, I would hate to see it fritter away someplace.
Well, yeah. So I mean, I think we've done some sort of. We've looked at a number of kind of different scenarios, like what if just people just take up fire resilience? What if everyone takes up net zero? So right now the program, and again, I think also knowing that the number of homes that are going to be rebuilt is a bit of a moving target as well, and I think that we're trying to be responsive to that. So we want to make sure that we have enough within the funding to be able to support everyone if they want to be able to access the full breadth of the program. And so right now that's doable, and so I think that's what we're doing.
That's the limit is $6 million, that's it? That's it, that's all available for all the?
That's what's been announced right now.
That's all that's been announced.
What does that allow at the full benefit of home?
Just for that.
For fire resilience.
86 into 6 million is what? How many homes can be done? Can be built, fixed, whatever. Lady's got a calculator out, old fashioned.
But 40% were uninsured that burned down, so we had 0 divided by 60.
So 40%
sure won't be net zero
Yeah.
or fire resilient. And then they've got to be able to come up with 10 to 80,000 to get it back. They want to build that way.
That
It's
was
feeling
my-
like this isn't going to be a fire resilient net zero community.
But I think the council's made its voice heard to PacifiCan, and hopefully they can carry it forward that you don't understand the rationale of why you have to have insurance, because regardless of whether it's insurance money or your life savings or your lotto winnings, the increased cost in building will be the same for everyone. So I know
And you're still
all
paying
in the
upfront.
group have heard us so loud and clear. I still have hope that they'll come back and say, anyone that was burned out in 2021 will get these incentives to rebuild.
Can you speak up a little? Anybody burnt out in 21 will get what?
These incentives.
These incentives to rebuild, whether you were insured or not. Because I don't understand the rationale, and I'm for,
Yes.
And we have
received that message very.
You've heard that?
Yeah, no, and I'm not saying that to stop the conversation, but I want to reiterate.
You're working on it.
We really have heard that message,
Loud and
and we
clear.
are really trying to work on
Thank
it.
you. As an aside, like someone like Clayton here, who's got the net zero down pat, is there potential for PacifiCan to work with builders that are net zero, ready to go, to cut it off at the pass so the money goes from you to him and I don't have to cough it up?
Exactly, that's what I want to know.
And you've already approved this fellow, he's worked with you 100 times, you know he's going to build what he says he's going to build. Why do I have to pay up front? In theory, right?
Especially if you don't have.
You or me?
Sorry guys, there's a whole team here today. Okay, so I think from the Government of Canada's perspective.
Sorry, would you introduce yourself?
Oh, sorry guys, my name's Jessica. I work with PacifiCan as well, and I work out of Ottawa. So I think the Government of Canada's perspective is, this is a relationship between the builder and the homeowner. You know, you guys are building your homes back. You don't want the government to tell you how to build your homes back. You want us to give you options and help for you to get to where you want to go. We don't want to be. The Government of Canada doesn't want to be.
We're asking you to do that.
No, I recognize that. I recognize that. But that puts the Government of Canada, I think, in a very uncomfortable, awkward, inappropriate position.
We're in a really uncomfortable, awkward, inappropriate position right now.
I recognize that, and I hear that.
I mean, if you think of the simple concept, there will be no program.
Correct.
So where will the millions and millions of dollars go that the federal government promised to the community of people who have already been devastated? And we're in 2023 now, and we're not asking for the government to tell you how to build your home or anything. We're just saying there needs to be a way, a program where that money is available, not necessarily go to the homeowners, but it's worked out. The government can do that, federal government, and that's not an awkward position. That's a caring situation for the federal government to put themselves in.
I think there's a lot of change.
It's about humanity here.
Wasn't there like $169 million originally with Mr. Blair? I think he's on the federal government.
Well, right now it's
Going
only
into BC, I'm not
85.
talking Lytton, okay? I'm talking about BC as a big province, 6 million people, okay? The figure was up at 160 million, I
But
think.
I'm just talking about what was given, maybe what it was.
Per year.
Yeah, that's it. Where is that millions of dollars going to go when none of the people in the community can build a home? Because government feels they're uncomfortable? It doesn't make sense.
So, sorry, I want to clarify here. This is the additional pieces on your home, right? Like,
Yes.
obviously you're still,
Absolutely.
there'll
We
still be
understand that, we
people
just
who-
can't afford it.
Okay,
Yeah,
I recognize that. I appreciate that.
especially the uninsured. Even the insured
No, I
cannot
know.
afford it. And this is the first I've heard about it being a primary residence. Is that true? So a person that has a rental is not eligible for this?
If it's your primary residence, yeah, it's.
So if you have a rental house, you are not eligible for this.
That's correct.
So 40% of the community had no insurance. Probably another 5 to 10% were rentals. So we're looking at maximum 50% that could potentially access this. And then out of that, a small percent will have the $10,000 to $80,000 to put up front. So now we're looking at about 10% of the community, if we're lucky, building back to these standards. That doesn't seem like a program supporting a fire-resistant, resilient, net zero community.
But if you put the human into it, it doesn't help that situation either.
Well, there'll be no.
People in the community have been through enough.
Jeez. I'm sorry. It's the first I've heard of that.
So again, I want to reiterate, we are still working on the uninsured problem. That is still something that is being currently worked through, and we hope to come back with a positive answer as soon as we receive that. It is still being worked through. It is not finalized yet, but let me be clear, the message has been heard, loud and clear. It is being worked on.
Well, it's only 40% of the population, so it's not too much to worry about. It. Ghost town of BC, which could happen. But let me basically tell you, folks, I'm getting old and I don't understand everything. I was in a bank recently, 3 months ago, and I had some money in there, some change. And the lady put me over 3 times. She said, Mr. Crozier, they are not giving mortgages in Lytton anymore. I said, oh yeah, really? I realize I'm a senior and I'm not getting a mortgage. I'm not looking for a mortgage, lady. She put me over 3 times. If not you looking for a mortgage, there is no mortgages going to be written in Lytton, Lytton, And the lady wasn't just behind the counter, she was selling derivatives, or whatever you want to call them, investments. So is that a policy, or are we going to find out tomorrow that it's all Dave's BS? But this lady was with me here, where that statement was told to me 3 times. No mortgages. That could make a lot of difference if they start with Cache Creek and Lytton. No mortgages. Where are you going to go to? Uninsured loans or different places? Nobody mentioned so.
Well,
Going to
I
get your
have
loan.
to add, I mean,
The
we've
casino?
had conversation for a long time. This is the first time today that I've heard that if you owned a house and you were renting it out at a reasonable rate, $650, $850 a month to cover your mortgage, to a seniors couple that had no equity in their life, needed a rental, or a teacher that was here for a year.
Yeah.
That's the first time I've heard that this does not apply to those rentals, because those rentals were always in short supply. We always had 20 or 30 people looking for rentals. Those rentals were not made with profit in mind. Those were old houses that were renovated so that they could provide accommodation to people that worked in our community, sometimes seasonal, sometimes elderly with other resources. So that really changes the character. And I'm sorry, we're not generic Canada here. When I was on the school board in Ashcroft 30 years ago, I had to argue, Lytton isn't generic Cache Creek, it isn't generic Clinton. Lytton had a character of its own, and it was humble, but it was rich in interaction between people. And so there's not real estate developers in here wanting to invest and make mega bucks. Maybe they will when we all get chased out. But historically, those have been modest rentals for people with low income. And so the fact that those won't be part of our future community is heartbreaking.
It's the first I've heard of it.
So, sorry, again, I'd like to reiterate, I recognize that. And I do think that the rental market is an important part of a community, of course that it is. But again, you know, these are the supplementary grants for people to build their homes back to net zero or fire resistant. So they're not replacing, we're not, obviously PacifiCan's not able to say you can't build a rental property. They're just not eligible for this specific grant program. There are other Government of Canada programs that perhaps the folks at Enercan or other agencies can speak to for solar panels and other stuff like that to build back to net zero, but to more energy efficient rather, sorry. But that's not what this program is for.
Well, I'm sorry, and I hope I'm not rude, but it was good advertisement for the feds to say, we're gonna help this community, and now they come in with a whole bunch of rules that don't even help the majority of the citizens. Sad story.
And some of them we're just hearing about for the first time today, which is really hard to take. We thought we were getting good news today. This isn't good news at all.
I'm just wondering, at least for the people that are insured, maybe something could be struck with their insurance company to say, I mean, this is gonna benefit the insurance companies, if you have a fire resilient home, I mean, it's better for them, and maybe they can fork up the extra money. Since they're building that, they're gonna provide for the house, at least for the insured people. That maybe answers some of the people, but some people without insurance, that something else has to come up. But maybe this could be like a deal struck between the insurance companies, or PacifiCan can step forward and say, yes, we are gonna guarantee this extra monies that you're providing for these people to get to fire resiliency and to get to net zero. That will guarantee that money to you. So the insurance companies would be probably bend over backwards for that. To provide that extra money, at least for the insured people. I just don't know coming up with something for the uninsured.
That's an interesting suggestion, and we can take that back.
Yeah, you could step to the plate for those guys, at least.
Can I build or something?
100%, please do.
You've gotten a little bit familiar with this whole dog and pony show lately, right? So for in the position that you're in as a builder, as a contractor, right? Am I right? You're a contractor. How does it sound to you, like knowing the way this is set up and seeing the way this is flowing through? Would you, as a builder, as a contractor, be comfortable with this? Like, you're going to have to, I remember overhearing one of the contractors say, we're going to have to front this cost because we're not going to get it back until after the deal is done. And essentially, is that the case? Like, would a contractor take that on, understanding that that the cash is going to come eventually?
You might find a builder that'll finance your build for you, but like as my company, no, we do monthly draws every month.
So a company
I'm not a
won't,
bank,
but
I'm a builder.
individuals are expected to. That's fine.
I think that's...
Well, there's people you gotta pay, subcontractors and people.
Exactly, they hand me an
You have to be
invoice.
paying
Yeah,
the
I'm not a
people.
bank, I'm a builder,
Yeah,
so
and
we
you'll
do
lose your
monthly
people.
draws.
We have to have it in our bank to pay when you're...
Exactly, yeah.
Well, maybe the solution would be to look to see if there's a program to have an interest-free loans.
It's really hard if you don't have work revenue. If you're a senior and you're on a fixed income and your income is $12,000 a year, it'd be really hard to carry $70,000 worth of incentives.
If you're lucky enough to be one of them 50% that were 60% well, lucky, but plan ahead to be insured, I guess, but
That's what it boils down to.
this isn't creating a net zero fire resilient community.
Government should build an thing, and that was what we're doing.
So this slide is just showing the steps through the program if you choose the pathway 2, the fire resilient and net zero or net zero ready. They both follow the same process. So again, starting with reviewing your eligibility, preparing your application. You would choose the pathway that you like up front and then submit your application. Then you would do the net zero design at that step, working with your certified net zero builder. And again, you would receive the grant payment of $5,000 after that's complete. And then it goes through to, again, showing those various documentation requirements of having a building permit and so on. Then it would go straight to the building of the home. And once you can show, again, demonstrating that you've met the CHBA, Canadian Home Builders Association Net Zero Ready or Net Zero Ready label, that's when that grant payment would come at the end there. So the question now is when will this be available? And so we're hoping to begin launching applications very, very shortly in 2 weeks. And we can provide more information on that process and what that will look like. And we really encourage you to reach out to us to discuss that, and we'll provide our email address in the next slide. But the other thing that can be done now is really to start looking at your Canadian Home Builders Association certified net zero builders. They're really going to be the key point of contact for homeowners in this entire program, and we'll connect you with the various professionals that also need to come in to be building a net zero home. And that's only for the net zero pathway. So if you're only interested in the fire resilient pathway, it doesn't require a certified builder. You can choose a builder of your choosing. And so here is our contact information, our email address, and our website, which is being updated. So there will be more information coming there. And I think that concludes our presentation.
On the net zero, it was clear that you were looking to have an expert come in, maybe for a fee of $5,000, to say, here's what's required to do net zero at the beginning of the process, to make sure everything's achieved that's to be achieved. And you close the process by getting a certification from the builder. So my question is on the fire resilience, and I heard talking about a checklist. So not an expectation you need a third party to come in and verify and whatever, there's a checklist. Anyway, my real question was, the city has a bylaw for both, but it's certainly wildfire, which is quite detailed. And the city will inspect, and the city will check everything in its bylaw. Is your wildfire resilience checklist and the city's bylaw the same? Is that your test that?
They're very closely aligned. They're not identical, but they are aligned, and we did do that test.
They're based off of the NRC WUI guidelines. So that's so we worked with a company called RDH. If anyone's familiar with them, they're a building science company, one of the largest ones in North America, and they specialize in fire resiliency and energy efficiency. And so we use them to understand what made sense from the WUI guideline, what made sense from the Lytton bylaw, and we took all the components of it that were applicable to the context in Lytton, and that's how we established our checklist. So you'll see almost 100% overlap with the bylaw, and then there are, I think, a few other additions that we've added to that checklist that we felt were important.
I certainly would suggest for the verification of what you're doing, so you're really comfortable the money's going for good value, for the community, so the community can see everything was intended as agreed to in the bylaw, is checked by the community, by the builders. I mean, you've got these all double checks, triple checks. So for the wildfire, the closest alignment possible is a good thing. You have a third party, the building inspector program in the community, doing all the checks. Everybody in the community knows if you got this money, everything was checked properly. Anyway, I'd be interested in almost the same. So what was it that was a little bit different? But anyway, I'm really pleased to hear it's all based around, and from our work, the NRC guideline is the right thing, that the bylaw is built around and that the program is built around. So I'm really pleased with what you're saying.
So I just have a quick question. So the Village of Lytton has a requirement to make homes fire resilience, and then PacifiCan is offering the $10,000 top up for fire resilience home. Is everyone rebuilding going to have to meet that fire resilience measure regardless? It's essentially like a free 10 grand. Is that not right?
That's a good point. Well, the 10 would only be for people, you guys still would only be able to give that to people with insurance, like not just anybody. That's the way it stands right now. Yeah.
And primary residence, so a rental will not be eligible for that 10 grand. I'm reassessing the percent of homes that were rentals, and I think it is much more than 10%.
Oh, I bet it's 40.
Yeah, so that on top of your uninsured, you're really like not addressing the issue with these grants or this program, where the funding available is not being applied to find the result that you want. We're setting us up for not having a fire, well, at least not a subsidized or a grant-driven fire resilient. Well, I guess it's not bylaws, but certainly the net zero isn't. So I don't see us getting there with this sort of incentive. Just to be frank, I don't think you're going to have much buy-in in this program. We just don't have, the residents here don't have those kind of funds to put up front. And now with the rentals, I'm really upset because I had rentals in town and I was planning on building net zero. As of this hour, I've totally just had to reassess how I'm going to build back. And it's not going to be net zero because I can't afford it. And my insurance isn't going to pay for it.
On one block on the back street, on both sides of Fraser, there's 6 households, 4 of them were rentals.
Yeah. Have you got those statistics? Yeah, you got that data? So you know how many homes you're actually going to be able to help? It's a fraction of the homes that burnt down.
Why wouldn't they do it for people that didn't have insurance? Why just insured for to get help from the federal government? I mean, we all paid taxes and worked on it. They wouldn't give us insurance, so it's not that we didn't try or didn't want it.
Well, I think as both Holly and Jessica have said, we've heard the issue, we understand the issue, and so we're certainly, it's absolutely under discussion, and we will be following up.
I know 3 neighbors that were denied, okay? 3 neighbors was burnt out, elderly, they went for insurance. Propane tank shouldn't be too close to the house. Where do you want to put it? My neighbors? Do you want to put the liability? Do you want to put it in the graveyard? No. That's code. That was code in Lytton. I put a roof on, brand new. They told me you need a new roof, $6 grand. They were looking at 12 grand for a metal roof. I couldn't afford 12 grand. The lady told me she should have been awarded. She told me exactly how my house was going to burn. Your roof's going to burn, your plastic siding's going to burn. But I mean, this was all code. This was all allowed
We
code.
didn't do it.
It wasn't illegal. The parts of the house was perfectly legal. New roof, new this, new that, and
Certified wood stove.
certified wood stove. Everything was done to the book, eh? There was no JIPO in there and no insurance. Well, they give me insurance for like nothing, no value. No value in the
I
house.
have a
It was 3
question
bedrooms,
about that.
2 by 6 built. There was a mobile home on one side and 1,200 square feet. A heritage basement, 6-foot walls, made out of rock over 40, 50 years. This is how people lost. This is a message you can take to the federal government. And anyway, it doesn't matter.
We're not building here if it's going to be like
I've
that.
heard enough today, so I have. You're going to see the insurance companies here will be starting to decline insurance with a lot of properties. And it's going to be a hard place to get insurance. It'll be like having 3 Imperials and looking for a driver's license. Yeah. Because of this climate change, you're going to start seeing all kinds of deviations in insurance and mortgages where they want to dish money out. And I don't blame them. Bank's there to make money. This contractor's here to make money. And it's going to be a challenge. And thank you very much for your help, ladies. It was quite a good presentation, and gentlemen. Yeah. And you, sir. Yeah.
Certainly, Mayor, you had a
So I have a question about the $10,000. So how did you come up with that money? And it's to cover for the fire resistant, so the siding, the roof, the whatever, the windows. That is a question that we've had is can we even get the windows that it would be required? Because we have heard that they're not even in supply. We can't get them. So have you done all of that research?
We did that research, and that's why, as Lucas said, maybe I'll let Lucas answer the question, but we did work with experts, as Lucas meant, RDH. So we worked closely with them, and they sort of did a whole costing. So there was modeling behind it. It wasn't a number that we just came up with. It was after doing some modeling. So I'll let Lucas speak to it a little bit more.
Sure, and to add to that, we worked with local builders from the central interior like Clayton and a handful of others to understand what the cost would be for all of those items on that checklist. So these numbers come from as good of a source as we could hope for. And for the windows piece of it, so the checklist specifies that we'll need a outer layer of tempered glass. And through our costing exercise, we found that that's very much so available by manufacturers here in BC. And the cost premium for it was about 10 to 15% more than a regular double glazed window. So it wasn't over the top, which was really encouraging.
So it was more than just going to Home Depot and pricing it out.
Absolutely, and we did the same thing for net zero. That's how we came up with all of our numbers, is working with local builders that hopefully homeowners will be able to engage with, and those numbers will hopefully line up and you won't incur any extra costs that way.
So maybe a question to the builder, from the shovel in the ground to finished product, for, was it 1,100 square feet you're looking at, and how much does it cost?
What, without net zero?
No, net zero.
Net zero house.
It totally depends on the house. Yeah, like shape. It's just a square box.
Yeah.
So the modeling, so the numbers that you see here, and Lucas was just speaking to, was based on modeling and inputs with local builders to understand, because Lucas, that slide where he highlighted, here are the ingredients of a net zero home. Yeah. So we went through a whole costing process, working with a number of local builders to say, well, what does it cost to build to these standards? Yeah. And then applied it to the model. So the numbers are that delta, that difference to step code 3 and what it takes for you to get to net zero. So that's how we base the grant that we're offering. But as Slayton's saying, that what it costs to build, the full cost of the home, that depends on what you choose to build.
Okay, if take away all of the net zero, only give me the number for the net zero, so for say 1,100 foot square
I
block.
think the funding that they've provided, that
That's what it
86, I
is?
think that is
That's
more
kind
than
of like
enough to
the
cover
max-
a house to get
kind
to
of
net
the
zero.
maximum?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if we
Okay.
go to that,
40
maybe that
so
example
net zero
slide,
down
yeah.
there is set.
And they went to
oh, there it is.
86,000, right, which I think is
Okay, gotcha.
way more than enough to cover
And then you
net
add
zero
the
funding.
rest here,
So
whatever your choices.
11,000 square foot, basic, very basic, without being allowed this, because we didn't have insurance, it's going to cost us what, about 300,000, 400,000?
Depends on the design.
Probably around 375.
Yeah, so it's, I'm not coming back to Lytton, it's not simple.
Yeah, unfortunately, until the camps that they've got down here that they've set up, they want
Yeah.
$250 a day per person.
Yeah, no,
Plus you got to pay your guy a live out,
Yeah.
probably $100 a day.
Yeah,
So you're
of course.
$350 a day
Yeah.
per person to be down here building a house. In one house, there's over $90,000 just to travel and live out to come
Yeah,
down
no.
here from Kamloops.
I just want to add that our group, is catastrophic loss reduction, we shared our costing on the wildfire side. So we came up with $5,000 for a typical home here, and we listed all the things that we included for $5,000. So I haven't seen what was included in this costing. I think 10,000 will probably cover everything. I assume you have a few other things on the list than what we include on ours. We did go to the local Home Depot, and we did check that everything was available. That was our story.
Lucas was pretty thorough on, like, we went and priced out every option that we could in the net zero program and the fire resiliency.
I mean, I'm quite comfortable $10,000 will take any home being rebuilt here and add the wildfire part. I don't know anything about net zero, but
there's lots of money in there for that.
I think they're being generous on this one.
I think that wouldn't, if you wanted to put a geothermal system in, I don't think that the 70,000 would cover, because that system's 35 to 50,000 itself.
Yeah.
And that would do more than just heat the home, because you can heat your water with it. And I think that's actually a better system than the air source. But I don't think that would cover that either. So I don't know why that's not included. Why isn't it? Why I can make that
You can achieve it
account?
with solar though. Why do you need geothermal?
You can achieve what?
You can heat your house with solar too. Yeah. Why do you need geothermal?
Where I come from, you can't. You're not in Edmonton. You wouldn't be able to achieve that with just solar. I mean, unless you have a really tight building.
And that's the whole point of net zero, right? We're building energy efficient homes, we're building airtight.
But you're talking
so your heating
R40
load,
walls,
your heating load
R60
goes
ceiling.
from, like I explained, from 60,000 BTUs to 12,000 BTUs.
Yeah.
So now you don't need 100 solar panels, you can get away with 20.
Right.
Yeah, I'm a builder as well, and colleagues of fine gentlemen here. My name's Daryl from Kamloops, and so just hearing all the comments, firstly, the amount of the, I agree with Clayton. That's, you know, the 86 and the 53 and the 10 is actually very good from that. So for the comments in the room of being able to afford all this. You know, I came today to be able to see how I could help, and as another builder, you know, to be able to figure out how to be able to. Clayton, you talked about the problems with the transport, right, and the camps and that sort of thing. And so, how can a builder work with not just one homeowner, but, you know, 5 minimum or a 10, and share
the
those
cost
costs?
comes down dramatically.
It's
You have to get
dramatic,
10.
and so, you know, you guys, I can see these guys, you know, well, how do I tell everybody what the cost of the house is? We want to, but there's so many other variables, and one of them is those big pieces, like, and so if we're able to understand that component, so which obviously we can't today. One of the things that we also talked about is the insurance side, and so from the builders, and we were very part of the front end piece of in Kamloops with these guys coming to Kamloops and the costing and all that stuff, and the discussion around the insurance companies. And so from the builder's perspective, I've worked with insurance companies before, and we all have, sometimes difficult, but as a builder, I never want to have a contract with the insurance company. I want that to be with the homeowner. We are directed with the homeowner directly, right, with under contract. So
Yeah, I just wanted to just comment on, thanks to Ranakarn for doing all that research, and I think those are good numbers. And as for if there's a way to be able to figure out with an insurance company that's popular, that's the same company with the ones that are insured, that they're all the same company, is there using 3 or 4 builders and we all, do 5 or get some volume discount on that? That's an opportunity, but hard to discuss today.
Also in a situation like that where you could agree to have, several houses built by several builders, things can get done faster. And then with these grants, there's also a possibility of third-party funding.
There's other grants like Clean BC, Fortis Gas, like aside from this one, there's a whole bunch of others. And, they could amount to depends on what you build to, the step code 4 or 5. I mean, for a homeowner, that could be like $15,000.
Yeah.
All those are payable again at the end.
That's all at the end, yeah.
And I think, Gerald, you highlighted what Jessica was saying earlier in terms of that relationship. The contract is between the homeowner and the builder. And as the federal government with the grant, that grant is for the homeowners, because the homeowner is going to be designing the home with the builder, everything. That's where the relationship is. So I think that was what was important to us in the grant and how we structured it. And it is, as Holly mentioned, it's an outcome-based grant. So I appreciate the concerns that have been shared today.
I feel for
why
you
it's
all.
structured that way.
It's a long process.
I'm still really confused about the simple fact that it's a grant. I mean, there's a lot of grant money out there from federal government and provincial, for that matter. When I applied for a grant, I applied for a $100,000 grant, you get it up front.
Other kind of programs.
It's somehow, this isn't all, the dots aren't connecting here, where you have a community where the federal government promised to help out, but we're going to put in all these barriers because the people can't come up with the money up front, so therefore they have to send out. It's a very sad situation.
Yeah, I was only just going to say, the federal government gives out different types of grants, and some of them are grants that you apply for that you have to then pay back.
It's different.
Yeah.
What I'm saying, feedback to the federal government. This is not helping. It does not help anybody. It can't add so many against us.
Lucky you.
You guys have wonderful presentation.
Yes.
Really good stuff. I love it. But to say, for a local person, one person, you go $89, that's awesome. They actually really want to help us. And then we go, no, by the way, there's this barrier, and that barrier.
You don't qualify.
You don't qualify. It's like throwing out the cake and saying, sorry, but you can't eat it.
I just wonder, it seems to me it's got to be a simple way of doing it, that, okay, it's generous amounts, okay, to do what needs to be done, and that's great. It's just the structuring of how the money is delivered. So if, in the beginning you're having to submit your initial application and what have you, and you've already have your contractor and your design and what have you, could it not be on whatever the contractors, I don't know, every contractor probably has a slightly different time frame as to what percentage of the money has to be paid at this time. Could it not then for the individual person to have that money, that portion of the money released, okay, the portion of the $86,000 if they're going released at the same time as the contractor needs it, so that then the money can just come to the homeowner, go to the contractor, and it just, that just seems to me to be the one stumbling block for the insured people. And then of course there's other, if you're looking at the uninsured and the rentals and things like that, but that to me would seem to take care of the problem.
Well, I think what Sharon is saying, that maybe if the funds could be paid out in the same way that an insurance company pays out the builder as things are progressing, how do they pay you?
It's the same thing like a draw.
A draw, so maybe that this program could be looked at as a draw. When certain things are made, then that fund, those funds are released instead of having to put the onus on the homeowner. Maybe it could be dealt with in a similar way as the insurance companies. Just a thought.
Well, thank you for sharing. I think this has been a really good discussion. I'm pleased to hear the numbers. I'm pleased to hear that there was with the positive feedback and then taking the constructive feedback back with us.
So, just playing around with it a bit more. So the money is basically a performance. So if the house is built and it meets the net zero standards and the fire resilience standards, then the homeowner gets the money. Well, what if it doesn't? What if it doesn't meet the standard?
You get a different builder.
That's right.
Well, it sounds to me like you're screwed, right?
Design.
It's designs, it's like another set of drawings, you gotta follow those to a T, and that's why we come out do a mid-construction blower door test with Jordan to make sure that we're finding holes.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. It's, as long as you follow the design that Jordan gives you, or gives me, that's easy. It's the blower door test that you wanna make sure your
Then
tightness
if
is
it's so
done.
easy, then why is it required to have the standard met at the end rather than having the money up front? You know, I mean, it seems to be one of these damned if you do and damned if you don't kind of situations.
Thank you very much for having us.